Are you lost in the chaotic whirlwind of day-to-day busyness? Do you yearn for a deeper sense of meaning and purpose in your life? Welcome to Be You, Your Story, Your Purpose, the podcast dedicated to empowering women on their journey of self-discovery and finding their true purpose through their own story. I'm your host, Brenda Simmons. Welcome, everybody, to the podcast. I am stepping a little bit outside of my norm today because my guest is Curtis Morley, and he is a five-time entrepreneur. He's a mentor, he's a coach, he's an educator, he's a thought leader, and even a mountaineer and a patent holder. So I'm really excited to hear what he holds his patent for. He has a goal of helping 1 million entrepreneurs find the success that they are looking for. Curtis is a sought-after speaker and has presented all over the world. He's recently changed his focus to not just entrepreneurship, but also in his new book called Counterfeit Emotions. And so he talks about authentic emotions versus counterfeit emotions. So we're going to take a deep dive into that today. And I'm so excited to have him on to share that with us. In his spare time, he loves to run. He competes in triathlons. He skis. He climbs mountains. He composes and performs music and spends as much time as he can with his loved ones as possible. He is really one of those people who has a lot of different interests and well-rounded. And so welcome to the podcast, Curtis. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Brenda. I'm so excited to share today.
Wonderful. Okay, so you have a story of how you switched from entrepreneurship to authenticity, I guess is how you would say that. How can you share with us what that story is and a little bit about your background?
Yeah. So like you talked about, I wrote a book called The Entrepreneur's Paradox. And it did fairly well. It made the Wall Street Journal bestseller list. And my publisher at the time, they said, "Wow, this is fantastic. Let's do a three-book series." So my first book was The Entrepreneur's Paradox and getting people out of the paradox. I started writing my second book, which was called The Timeline of Business. And as I've coached entrepreneurs throughout the years, I found that not only were they doing the same mistakes I made in my first five businesses, but they were doing them in the same order.
Oh,
So
interesting.
yeah, it was fascinating because you could almost become predictive, like saying, okay, you're at this stage. I know that your next step is going to be hiring someone that's going to be a trusted confidant. And most likely you're going to abdicate all of your responsibility on them. And then this is going to happen. The timeline, as I started doing this with more and more entrepreneurs, I started seeing, oh, you're doing the exact same things and you're doing it in the same order. And so laying out that timeline of business was my second book, and that's where I was headed. And the rest of my life was going to be involved with helping entrepreneurs take their business to the next level and go from basement to buyout and succeed wildly. And I still do a fraction of my time is helping entrepreneurs now. But like you said, I did transition and I changed from my focus being on entrepreneurship to the book I'm writing now, which is called Counterfeit Emotions. And Counterfeit Emotions, the premise behind it is that every emotion that serves us, every emotion that takes us where we want to go, has a counterfeit, except for one. There's only one emotion that has no counterfeit. And I think we're going to talk about that a little later
Yes,
on.
we are. I'm excited to find out what that one is.
Yeah. And so here I am, heads down, writing this book about entrepreneurship and this timeline and being able to create a crystal ball, so to speak, being able to say, all right, you tell me where you're at. I can accurately predict what's coming next. And while I was doing that, I went through some really hard times for me personally, and some really important times for me. I think that might be the best description is that it was important because I went through the hardest trial I've ever gone through, going through a divorce. And it it brought me to my knees more times than I can say. And I had a friend, Jerry Williamson, who was also going through a divorce right around the same time. I had preceded him by I think 9 months, and he was going through a divorce as well. And Jerry and I were friends all the way from back in college, and he could make an entire room laugh so hard that their cheeks and their gut would hurt. He was the life of the party and just a good man. Just a good man. And as we were going through our journey together, um, I apologize because it still hurts. Um, Jerry Jerry decided to take his life, and I'm not okay with that. I'm not okay with the fact that he left us in this way because he didn't have to. And as I was going through my trials, as I was finding myself on my knees over and over again, and this happened with Jerry, I I had to come to a realization for myself. I had to say, Curtis, who do you really want to be? Who are you? Who are you really? And I realized that all of my life I had very skewed misperceptions about things that I was feeling. I had a totally dysfunctional relationship with pain. Pain and I, we had the worst relationship, and I had a misconception about being nice. I was told my entire life, be nice, be nice, be nice, and it's actually the counterfeit of kind. Nice is the counterfeit of kind, and nice is a defense mechanism where kind is a virtue. Nice is avoidant, where kind leans in. Nice will never rock the boat because they don't want to hurt, the nice guy will say, "Oh, I don't want to hurt your feelings," or "I don't want to make you feel." Yep, I put that in air quotes. I don't want to make you feel a certain way. The truth is, we don't have control over anyone else's emotions. And that idea that I can make you feel and you can make me feel, and therefore I'm not going to rock this boat is so destructive because nice leans way out and kind leans in. Kind leans in and says, I care enough about you that I am going to rock the boat because I'm going to row the boat. And if I'm willing to row the boat, there's guaranteed that there's going to be rocking. And so I started exploring this idea that with pain and with being nice, and actually getting a little vulnerable here, um, the way I learned about nice is I had a very kind friend who called me up one day and he said, "Hey Curtis, do people tell you you're a nice guy?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm a nice guy." I'm like,
Like you're
"Yeah, I'm
taking
so
that as a
nice."
compliment, right?
Yeah. And he goes, "Can I tell you something?" I said, "Sure." He goes, "The nice guy is the most despicable person on the planet." And I'm like,
Oh, that
"Wait."
had to have just cut you.
I was like, "You just totally set me up for this." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And he goes, "The nice guy is not honest. The nice guy is manipulative. The nice guy is not actually very nice." And I'm like, "What?" And he said, "Let's do a little test." He's like, "When was the last time you did the dishes?" I was like, "Oh, I don't know, Tuesday." He's like, "Well, did you do it because you love the person? Did you do it because you wanted to serve them? Did you do it because there was no strings attached?" And I was like, "Oof, no.
Nope.
I did it because I wanted something." I did it because I had an agenda. And and I realized, wow, it's true. The nice guy isn't honest because when things were hard, I wouldn't lean in, I would lean out and I would do the dishes instead of having hard conversations. I would clean up the kitchen instead of sitting down and saying, "Hey, I can see that this is really tough. Do you want to talk about it?" I was using niceness to avoid and to make someone like me when kind won't ever do that. Kind doesn't do the dishes. Kind has that conversation.
That's so fascinating. I learned about you and about kind versus nice through our recent guest, Christina Owens.
Mm.
And that it was so fascinating hearing her journey with the same thing. And it sounds to me like you have kind of had to go through that same journey. You've had to learn it yourself. I'm curious, you have so much experience in the entrepreneurship world and that observing, mindset and that natural curiosity. Did that help you understand, the counterfeit emotions? Like how did you even like I mean, was this friend, was that how you first noticed the counterfeit emotions? Or like what was that journey like for you?
Yeah, it started with one pair. It started with the one dyad of pain versus misery. And like I said, I had such a dysfunctional relationship with pain. I thought pain was bad. If I felt pain, it meant I'm bad, my decisions are bad, or my environment's bad. There's something bad going on right now. I had no clue that pain, I always thought, oh, pain is the worst thing ever, and let's take pain, and as it comes in, let's just shove it in that steel box inside my heart and clamp it down so tight. Let's make that pain just as small as we can. And I thought that if here's a spectrum, I thought that on one side was pain and on the other side was joy and love. And if I'm experiencing pain, then I don't get joy and love. It's completely exclusive and they're separated and there is no mixing oil and water. Like it is pain or it is joy. It is pain or it is love. You don't get the combo. And what I didn't realize was that I was actually calling misery pain. And misery is such a nasty counterfeit for pain because is misery is what we do to smother the pain. The misery box in our hearts, we think it's this protection, but it's actually hiding the pain. And if you look through all the dyads or the pairings of counterfeit emotions, there's only a couple of the authentic emotions that are not meant to be held. They're meant to be felt. They're not meant to be held. And pain is one of those. Pain is one of those emotions that is supposed to wash through us, that is supposed to leak out our eyes, that is supposed to get us to move. And that's one of the beauties of pain. Pain demands action and pain demands attention. It demands it. You do not, we do not get out of this life without pain. Pain is inevitable. Misery is optional. And misery is based in two things, in blame and shame. Misery is made up of those two other emotions, blame and shame. And so I was experiencing pain and I was had my bucket of misery over here and I'm just dipping in and just pouring it on top of my head. I'm just like, let's go. Let's put the cover this pain in misery. And actually an example, let me see, where is it? Oh, here we go. An example that I love is that I imagine pain as a diamond, as a very sharp diamond. and it's brilliant and it demands attention. When you look, you're like, oh, I have to keep looking at that. It's so
Right. There's so
brilliant.
many facets to it.
There's so many facets, and there's this sharp point on top of it. And the and misery is misery is like a it's like a tub of tar or slime. And what we do is we take this brilliant thing that's demanding attention and we say, nope, we're going to pour this misery on top of it because we don't want to see it. We don't want to address it. We don't want this pain in our lives. We're going to turn it into this black goo that is just dripping all over the pain. And that's how it feels too, because misery is a trap. Misery is like you're in this swamp and you can't get out. And yet pain is still inside there. And when we get rid of the blame, when we get rid of the shame, and we uncover the diamond and we actually pick it up, hold the diamond, address it, and not only address it to say, this hurts, but address it to say, what is my part in this pain? Being willing to pick it up and look at the brilliance of it. That is where we let the pain flow. That's where we let it move us to action. And as long as it's covered in that black, nasty tar, we can never pick it up. We can never see the true brilliance of it. And my favorite saying about pain is that pain is God's chisel that he uses to carve out our souls so that he can fill it with love and joy. And you remember the spectrum, you know, over here we have pain, over here we have misery or joy and love.
Joy. Hmm.
Yeah. The truth is, we get to decide where to put the pain. And this side is not pain, this side is misery. On this side of the spectrum is misery, and we can bury it deep in the sludge of misery. Or we can actually move our pain. We choose where it sits, and we can move our pain into joy and love, and we can elevate the pain. We can honor the pain. We can see the pain for how brilliant it is and the change that it's going to make in our lives. And when we do that, then the pain has served its purpose. And it does, it flows through us. The only way through pain is through pain. There, there's no up and down and around and over and under. It is through pain. The only way through pain is through pain. And when I realized that there was this counterfeit of misery and that I was calling pain misery and misery pain, I realized, wait, there is this counterfeit. And then shortly after, my friend had that conversation with me. And I'm like, well, if I'm not supposed to be nice, then what am I supposed to be?
Right.
And and I thought, how is it that I never, like my whole life, ever since Disney and Thumper, you know, saying if you can't say nothing nice, don't say nothing at all. You
Yep.
know, you think about that statement that if you can't say anything nice, well, then what's the alternative? Then shut up. Don't have important conversations. Don't speak truth. Don't lean in. Just fade away. Be quiet. Be this, you know, hidden figure way back in the distance. Just don't say anything. That's not kind. That's not kind. And when I
No.
realized that kind is authentic and nice is its counterfeit, and I started seeing these patterns, I was like, well, are there other emotions? And so I started doing research, and I'm currently at about almost 5 years of research around this, and I learned that every emotion, every single emotion that serves us, every authentic emotion has a counterfeit, except for one. There's only one that has no counterfeit.
Okay, we're going to get to that one in just a second, but I have to interject here because I love your your visual of the sludge over the diamond. I can't tell you how many times I have processed my own emotions, and especially when I was first starting to figure out how to do it, I would I try to give my emotions a physical entity, like I make them look a certain way, like I they feel like the sludge or whatever, and I've had emotions feel like many different things. But when I first started learning how to do this, the only thing I could ever come up with was sludge, because
Mm,
that's what it felt like. And it felt like this overwhelming tar that just encompassed everywhere, every part of my body. And so it was fascinating to me how once I was able to remove just that portion of the emotion, that the misery, like you say, and I was able to so much easier process other emotions too. And so I love that visual of how it just encompasses everything. And you really can't move on until that is removed. I also loved the where you can put pain. Because I believe that our capacity to feel joy is dependent not on the misery, but on your capacity to feel pain.
yes.
And if you put those in the same on the same side, like I think both of those can grow exponentially, and not that I'm saying like, oh, we should all seek for pain, right? Because we're seeking for joy, right? But it's the pain that allows us to feel that level of joy.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's it is when I took this brilliant pain and I shoved it in the steel box of sludge in my heart. I didn't know it was sludge. I thought it was just this steel box that I'm strong. I don't have to
Right.
feel this pain. I'm strong. I can do this. But every time I did that, every time I tried to minimize the pain and shrink it down as small as I could get it and compact it, what I was really doing was I was taking my entire emotional spectrum and shrinking it down. That when
Yes.
I was shrinking the pain, I was shrinking my ability to feel joy and feel love because I wasn't willing to feel. That's it. I wasn't willing to feel because I was saying, nope, this pain is too much. I'm squishing it in here. I'm not going to feel this. Well, you don't turn off just one. You turn off the whole emotional spectrum.
Absolutely.
And that's what I did. That's what I did. And I didn't realize how damaging it was. And yeah, it's a defense mechanism. It is absolutely a defense mechanism. But once I realized, hey, it's time to pick it up. It's time to look at the brilliance. It's time to say, I have a part in this pain. I do. And I'm going to be responsible for that. And the rest that I don't, I'm just going to feel it. I'm just going to let it come in and it's going to hurt. And that's the nature of pain is it hurts. It hurts bad. And I'm going to let it hurt. And I'm going to have grace. I'm going to say to myself, yeah, this makes a lot of sense why this hurts so bad. And it's okay. And just feel it. Just pick it up. Just look at the brilliance and just feel it and ask yourself, instead of the misery statement, the victim statement of why is this happening to me? That's the sludge. That's the slime. Why is this happening to me? Instead of saying that, we can say, why is this happening for me? And we can look at the diamond and we can say, this is sure brilliant. This is sure stunning. And why is it happening for me? And say, I can grow from this. I can learn from this. And we can even transcend one step higher, going from victim to victor. And there's one step above that, and that's vessel. Is we can ask the question, how can this happen through me? Going from why is this happening to me? Why is this happening for me? And then how can this happen through me so that I can be a vessel to help others? because when you feel that pain, your capacity for empathy and compassion grows so much, and your experience can help others to become what they need to become. And transcending all three steps turns this world into a really amazing place.
Absolutely. And if you think about it, that is the power of choice because
Yeah,
each step is a choice.
yeah,
It's not something that just comes to you. It's an intention. And it can feel really risky and vulnerable and painful, but so worth it.
yeah.
So worth it.
So
Okay, so let's get into what is that one emotion that does not have a counterfeit.
the one emotion that has no counterfeit is peace.
Okay,
And
so dive into that.
and when I speak and things, I ask people, I like, what do you think the one emotion without a counterfeit is? A lot of people say love. A lot of people say joy. Love has the counterfeit of lust. Joy has the counterfeit of pleasure. But peace, there is no emotion that looks, acts, and feels like peace, but yet it creates a destructive cycle of disconnection in our lives. And that truly is the way to understand if it's an authentic emotion or if it's counterfeit. The definition of a counterfeit is that it's an emotion that looks, acts, and feels like an authentic emotion, but it creates a destructive cycle of disconnection. And that disconnection is so critical to the definition, is every single counterfeit emotion disconnects us. It either disconnects us from ourselves, it disconnects us from others, it disconnects us from God, or it disconnects us from the truth. And so there is nothing that looks and feels like peace that disconnects. And not only is, if you look at the emotional research, does it say this, but the neuroscience behind this is fascinating. The neuroscience behind peace is like nothing else. It's incredible. There, every emotion, counterfeit, authentic, doesn't matter. Every emotion is tied to a sensory perception. There's something that happens in our body, either dopamine in the brain or cortisol or oxytocin or all of these chemicals that are squirting. There's a sensory perception that happens with every emotion except for peace.
Really? So what happens with peace?
They have no definition. They have no explanation of why we feel peace. There is no peace drug in the brain. There is a place in the brain where we feel peace, but there's currently no explanation of why we feel
So
peace.
that's fascinating. So do you think it's like a purely spiritual emotion then, since there's no tie to your body?
Well, being Christian and being, believing in Christ, I believe that one of the big reasons that we feel peace and it can't be counterfeited is because it comes from the Prince of Peace. And and right now, the neuroscience says that peace is actually a lack of all the other emotions. That peace is when we get into a state of surrender. Peace is a place where we give ourselves to God. We accept life for the truth that it is. We accept pain for the truth that it is. We do our best, and then we give God the rest. And and that is a place where we can find peace. And it's really interesting because we just did a men's event where we did a meditation, and it was with the Here Brotherhood, an amazing organization. And one of the founders of the Here Brotherhood did this meditation, and they said, "All right, think about the first time you felt peace." And so I participated. I was like, "Great, this is awesome." And the first thought was when I was maybe 3 years old, and I remember my mom scratching my back as I'm in bed, and it felt so warm, so comforting, so like nothing in the world was wrong at that moment. It just felt so beautiful. And then he said, "Okay, now transition and go to the most powerful time you felt peace, the most powerful amount of peace you thought felt." And it was really interesting because it wasn't a place of comfort, a safety. It wasn't a comfort that came from this protective, loving mother. It was a place of distress. It was a place where I was in the hurricane. It was a place where everything in life was quote unquote going wrong.
Yeah.
It's when I felt the most powerful peace that I've ever felt. And it went from comfort to a peace in Christ. And and then recently, back in September, I got married again. And being with my Patty is also a place where I feel so much peace. Just her touch of like touching my hand or the back of my neck, or it's also a place of peace. And that's a peace that comes from growth and unity and togetherness. And it showed that there is no there is no circumstance that determines peace. That peace comes from a very different place. Peace comes from a very different place, and it doesn't matter if we are 3 years old and being tucked in bed, or if we're in the hardest times of our life, we can carry peace with us no matter what. We can carry peace with us through the trials. It's not dependent on how good life is. It's dependent on something very different.
That's absolutely beautiful. I'm kind of torn because I wanted to explore that a little bit, and then I want to also go back to talking about how to identify the counterfeit emotion, because I think they're both very beautiful. But I'm gonna go for going back a little bit because
Okay.
I want to explore, just because I feel like um it is really, really important to understand how to identify it, because it's kind of like a 12-step program, right? And I'm not comparing it this to that, but I'm just saying that first step is identifying, right? And if you can't identify what's
Mm.
going on inside of you, then you can't move on. You can't grow from that. And so how, like, you talk about four different criteria to identify a counterfeit. And you've mentioned that, but I'm not sure that you've gone through all of them. Can you list those and kind of talk about those for us?
Yeah, there's four criteria to know if you're living in an authentic emotion or a counterfeit. If you're living your most authentic life. And to state them quickly, the first is connection, then direction, then motivation, and finally valuation. So connection, direction, motivation, evaluation. And I put them all with shuns, so it'd be easy to remember. And the most important one is that first one is connection. Does this emotion connect me? Does it connect me to my authentic self? Does it connect me to the divine inside of me? Or does it disconnect me? Does it connect me to you and my family and those around me? Like true connection. Does it connect me to God? And does it connect me to truth? That one is really important. Does this
Mm,
emotion connect me to truth? If it connects, it's authentic. If it disconnects, and this plays out true in every case in the counterfeits, that if it disconnects, it's not authentic. So that's our first one is connection. The second one is direction. And this blew my mind. When I realized this, it blew my mind because the authentic emotions, those ones people are like, oh yeah, I can guess where that's going to take me. Like an authentic emotion, it moves me forward or it takes me upward or it brings me together, right?
mhm.
And that's pretty easy to understand. And like pain, you think about the saying with pain,
No gain, right?
no gain because it takes you to gain. But think about the saying for misery, and this is where I was just like I was like, well, the counterfeits are going to do the opposite, right? They're going to take me backward, or they're going to take me down, or they're going to, pull me apart. But think about the saying for misery. Misery loves
Company,
company.
not to be risen out of it. Yeah,
Yes.
to stew in it.
Misery.
Right. Oh my
And
gosh, that's so good.
all of the counterfeits, they have one direction and it's a circle. It comes back to itself. Misery can't survive without more misery. It will die naturally. If you leave off the blame and shame, misery will die naturally. But if you keep adding to that and you bring friends in and like, hey, let's commiserate together and let's vilify this person or that, or let's talk about how bad your life is. Oh boy, the slime, it just grows and grows. It just becomes
Yeah.
this massive black ooze. And the direction for every counterfeit is back to itself. Anxiety breeds anxiety. Misery has to have misery. Lust craves lust. And they all die if you stop feeding them with themselves. And that's how you can know. And you think about the one of the simple emotions is is fear. And fear breeds fear. It breeds it. It is just like, let's go, let's build this. And that's well, like when I realized that, I was like, wow, I thought it would be backwards or downwards, or but no, that emotion leads
Back.
back to
Wow.
itself. And it was crazy. So that's our second criteria. The third criteria is motivation. And every authentic emotion is motivated by what I call meta emotions. So emotions that cover other emotions that are part of the other emotions. And every authentic has love and surrender as their motivation. And every counterfeit is based in fear and control. Every single one of them. And this for me personally, and I know that a lot of people are this way too. That's one of my biggest like light bulbs. That's one of my biggest indicators. Like if I'm feeling fear, because I know what fear feels like. Oh boy, do I know what fear feels like.
Right. Right.
Fear. Tell me how you feel fear, Brenda. Like what do you feel physically when you feel fear?
I feel myself cave in on myself. And it's
Yes.
yeah, and I don't want to, and it's very physical for me. Like I actually can feel myself, going inward and and then on a larger level, like I don't want to do anything. I tend to shut down. Like, and I
Yeah.
don't want to show up in the world because I'm scared to. I don't want to talk to people, So yeah, that's how it shows up for me.
Yeah, I love that description. For yeah, it's like steel bands across your chest that are
Hmm.
just squeezing in and tightening, and your breathing gets shallow.
Yeah.
And yeah, life
Yeah.
feels so heavy. When I feel that, it's like ding. It's like in my brain, I go, uh-oh, okay, fear. So what's my motivation right now? And I look at what I'm feeling and I say, hmm. Is that based in fear? And is it based in control that I have to control this situation? Because if it is, it's counterfeit. If it's based in love and surrender and saying, you know what, I'm just going to do my best. I'm going to do my best and I'm going to give God the rest. It's up to him from that point on. And I'm going to do it out of love. It's unattached. There's no strings. There's no I'm going to do this to get something. It's just I'm going to do it out of love, and that's it. And when I feel that, I know I'm in the authentic Curtis. I know I'm in the authentic Curtis when I'm feeling that. And when I'm not, I'm in this other state of constriction and scarcity and my decisions like all of they feel desperate and
Yes. That is such a good word. Yeah.
and decisions done in desperation they dictate disaster and
Mhm.
it's so true in my life when I'm making decisions in desperation it's like okay here comes some disaster get ready for it it's coming
Right.
like it's just gonna happen. But when I'm doing it in love, it's the neatest thing because it doesn't matter what it is. I know it's gonna be for my good. And I know that it's going to help others and it's going to bless my life and their life. And so that third one is such a great indicator of am I living authentically or am I living in the counterfeit? And the final one is valuation. So connection, direction, motivation, and valuation. And every authentic emotion values me as divine, and it also values you as divine. It's not just here. It doesn't stop with me. It says I'm divine and you're divine. And when we can see the divinity in others, when we can see them as true children of God and not just human, but even more than human, then it's amazing how we act towards that person. Whereas if the opposite, the counterfeit, is saying, you're worthless, like shame. Shame is it's such a disconnector. It just chops us off from connection and it chops us off from any value. It says you're worthless, but it also says you're worth less.
Mm-hmm.
It gets into that comparison of saying, well, Brenda's background is so much better than mine. I've got all these crazy books behind me. Oh, look how nice her desk is and the plants and we get into this state of a comparison that says number one, my value is zero, but even if someone else's value is zero, I'm negative one. I'm always one less or two or 10 or 100 less. I'm worth less and I'm worthless
Yeah.
both. And that's those are the four criteria to understand, am I living authentically? Am I living in that space that is full of abundance, that's full of growth, that's full of health? Or am I living in the counterfeit and doing that cycle over and over and over again? And it's a circle if you're looking at it from above, but if you pull it up in 3D, that circle descends
Viral.
each time. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. I love choosing a word of the year, and I've talked about my word of the year quite a bit on the podcast because it has really been a huge lesson for me in a lot of different ways. So my word of the year is surrender. And it has, so I love that you have incorporated this into your four criteria. And it's interesting to me how when you focus on that one word so much, and I've done this so many times, I find myself creeping so many times into control, which is why I chose surrender, because I realized that I was trying to control things that were not mine to control. And and a lot of that came to my emotions too, and how I was showing up in the world and just trying to force things all the time rather than surrendering the things that are not
Yeah.
mine to control. So that I really love how you have broken that down. I think that's so wonderful. And it helps me to, and I kind of feel like, okay, this was a really good thing to focus on because it encompasses so many different things. So yeah, that's really wonderful. I'm curious, Curtis, like in your helping other people and in your evaluation of these counterfeit emotions, do you find that men and women like do they struggle with different emotions in the counterfeits to them?
They
Like,
definitely gravitate to some over others. Absolutely. There's no question about it. And it's beautiful that the women gravitate to some and the men gravitate to some. It's absolutely beautiful because that talks to the divine feminine and the divine masculine and the importance of that and the beauty of the combination of the two. I love the combination of the two. And like when I think of divine feminine, I instantly think of Patty. She's my Patty, and she is the most beautiful person you've ever met. She just shines. I don't even know how to describe it. She is shiny like like a
yeah.
diamond. and she just brings so much peace. Like she just carries this peace with her in everywhere she goes. And like I think of her and then I think of, okay, what are my responsibilities with the divine masculine? What do I need to do to be that strength and how do those blend so that they are together? And with women, some of the ones that they naturally gravitate to is nice versus kind is tremendously popular with women. And that one, to be fair, is also popular with men. Men, like especially in today's day and age where yeah, that it's tipped so far into, oh, don't be toxic, don't be this toxic masculinity that men are now just be like, hey, I have to be the nice guy and there's no other option. It's either nice or mean, right? And
Hmm.
nice is over here, mean is over here, and that pendulum can swing back and forth, but kind sits right in the center.
Hmm.
Kind doesn't have the swings. Kind is at rest. Kind is a place where we don't have to hold the ball up on this side or hold the ball up on this side. Kind is a place of rest, and kind is boundaried. And so, nice versus kind is one. Another one is belonging versus fitting in. Women seem to gravitate to belonging versus fitting in and understanding the difference there because there's a huge difference. And I think of junior high every time I say the word fitting in. I think, like,
Yeah.
okay, we all want to fit in with our friends and our teammates and our classmates and everything else. And belonging has nothing to do with fitting in. And yet it's so sneaky because it like tries to lay on top of belonging. Fitting in tries to lay on top of belonging, where belonging is actually instinctual. Belonging is a survival mechanism. Like you have to belong to survive. Without a mother and a father, a baby dies. Like you have to be taken care of, and it's instinctual. Whereas fitting in is such a counterfeit. It's so fake. And
There's
so,
a conforming that happens in fitting in, wouldn't you
yes,
say? Yeah, like you can change who you are by fitting in rather than being who you are.
yeah. Belonging says, I'm loved and accepted for who I am.
Hmm.
Fitting in says, I have to change who I am to be loved and accepted. And the trouble with that is that it's that cycle, it's that circle that when you're in that fitting in circle, you never present your authentic self because you have to wear the jeans that they wear and you have to laugh at the jokes that they say and you have to be them, which means you're not you. And because you're not you, you can never be loved for you. You can never be accepted for you because you're not you. You're
Right.
you're being this other person that's conforming. And so, yeah, it's that trap again. It's that spiral. Um, for men, some of the ones I'm actually doing a 5 week mastermind this coming up this week, and for men, some of the dyads we're going to do week after week. One is power versus control, and that I love this principle because control is so destructive on relationships and on self. Power, when I think of power, I think of Martin Luther King. When I think of
Hmm.
power, I think of Gandhi. When I think of power, I think of Christ. When I think of power, I think of it just like you're holding a battery, right? The power is inside. Control is what you do to the outside. Power is here, and that's given to us from God. God has given us each greatness. Every single one of us has greatness and power inside of them. And when we transmute that into, well, I'm going to control, oh, it's so dark and it's so you know the feeling. It's just
I
like,
do. I do. Well, and I know coming from like I've talked to a lot of women and it's so fascinating because women want a powerful man. They don't want controlling. They want
yes,
leadership. I mean, I think women crave that. And I think women tend to take over that if they don't see it.
yes, yes. That's exactly it. Yeah, and that mixing of the divine feminine and divine masculine.
Exactly.
They need a
Exactly.
powerful man. And it's not because they don't have their own power. No, it's the opposite. They have power in peace. They have power, like
Hmm.
this amazing ability. And they need somebody that is going to say, you know what? I'm not going to control, but I am going to tap into my power. I am going to be strong and tap into the greatness inside of me. Yeah. So power versus control. We're going to talk about love versus lust
Hmm.
and how lust can mimic love so closely. And we're going to talk about pain versus misery. We're going to talk about guilt versus shame. And that one, the guilt versus shame, that both sides, the male and the
Yeah.
female, really latch onto that one. And because it's so misunderstood. Like guilt in today's world is getting such a bad rap. It's getting a really bad rap. People are like, "Oh, that's such a guilt trip. Don't let them guilt you." What they actually mean, if you got down to the true definition, is shame. That guilt connects. If you look at the etymology of the word guilt, it comes from a 1300s word of Old English called gilden. And gilden means to make whole. Gilden means to repay. The feeling of guilt is to make you whole. That's the feeling of guilt is like, I did something wrong, and therefore I need to make restitution. I need to come to you and make you whole. That's the feeling of guilt. Guilt says I did something wrong. Shame says I am wrong. Guilt says I made a mistake. Shame says my existence is a mistake. And it one talks about the action, the other talks about the character. Guilt says, yeah, my action, my choices hurt you. And guilt is actually based in empathy. And that when I realized that, I was like, that is so amazing. Guilt is based in empathy because I see you hurting and I know what it feels like to hurt. I know that feeling. And I don't want my actions to cause you harm. And therefore, I'm going to come to you. I'm going to connect. Remember, connection, first step.
But I was just thinking, like, you can see all four of those criteria in just in the way you've described that. It's beautiful.
Yeah, yeah, and it values you. And there's this direction. The direction I have to go is to you. I have to go to you. Shame says go to the basement and hide and cover yourself and don't accept any responsibility and just keep blaming them because it's probably their fault anyway. And
Right.
that's shame.
Yeah.
Guilt says bring it into the light. Open this up. Say I made a mistake. And I am so sorry. And not have the strings, not have anything else, just the apology and say, what can I do? What can I do to make you whole? What can I do to repay? How can I help you? Because I know how bad it hurts. And I'm so sorry.
That's so beautiful. I love that definition of guilt helping us to be whole. And because that is not what is how it's interpreted. That's not you know what I mean? So I love that you bring that to light. It's just absolutely beautiful. Okay, so you're working on your book. When do you think your book will be published?
I am currently shooting for a publication date of, get this, May of next year.
Awesome.
So
Awesome, awesome.
May of
Well, we will
2025.
we will definitely be looking for it. So in the meantime, where can our listeners find you?
The best place is either counterfeitemotions.com, the website, where you can find 5-day mini courses. We also do 21-day master classes around each one of these dyads. So you can spend 5 days really getting into the practice of living authentically, the practice of living in love and getting rid of lust, the practice of tapping into guilt and how beautiful, important guilt is and getting rid of the shame in your life. You can practice, and that's really what it is. It's a learning, but it's also a practice. So we do multiple events and lots of speaking, but really the core are these 5 day courses or the 21-day master classes. And they're each beautiful. And for Mental Health Awareness Month, this month, all of the 5 day courses are down from 197 to $19.
Holy
Just for this
smokes.
month.
Like
Yeah.
take advantage of that, right? That's amazing.
And if you want to get a subscription instead of the $500, we're doing it for $49. And you can get a subscription which gives you 3 courses per month. So you can do three of the 5 day courses per month and have a subscription for the year. So you can basically get a one course free. So
Wow, that's beautiful. That's awesome. I love that. So I will put the links to that in the show notes as well as your social media links so people can check you out as well. Okay, Curtis, one last nugget. If you could tell our audience one thing, what, that is just really core to your message and who you are, what would you want to share?
I, I thank you. Thank you for asking that question. I think the one thing that above all of this is that every emotion we feel, every emotion has a purpose. Not every emotion serves us, but every emotion has a purpose. And feeling the counterfeits doesn't mean you're bad. It doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you or you're broken. Every emotion either serves us or brings us a message. And even when we're feeling the counterfeits, every counterfeit emotion brings us a message that says, get into authenticity. Find that authentic emotion. That if we're feeling shame, that's a message to us that we have work to do. And there's no good or bad, and I'm feeling this, so I must be bad or horrible. No, feel everything. Feel them all. Feel the authentic, feel the counterfeit. And when you feel the counterfeit and you recognize the fear and the control and the disconnection, use that. Let that be a messenger, not a dictator. Use that because every emotion brings at least a message. Use that to say, I get the message. It's time for me to grow. And that's okay. I'm exactly where I need to be today, and I'm exactly where I need to be so I can grow. And so don't put any weight on either one. Just know that you can give yourself grace. Know that you can give yourself compassion, that when life brings you the pain, when life brings you that brilliant, hard, just feel it. Just let it flow. Just feel the emotions and then step into the authentic because that's where we're meant to be.
That's where we rise higher. Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you, Curtis. This has been an hour well spent, and I appreciate you coming on the podcast. It's been wonderful.
Thank you so much, Brenda. I've loved our conversation. Thank you for being willing to get into that heart space with me.
I am so grateful to have had Curtis on the podcast today. I was so struck by his understanding of the counterfeit versus the authentic emotions and how wonderful to have that explained in such a poignant and clear way so that we can understand the difference between them and how to tell. I look back on my life and, it is so easy to fall into those counterfeit emotions. And a lot of times it's done just by habit. That's what we're taught, or those are the social norms, or, it takes effort to get back into those authentic emotions. And yet, when we do, well, I guess I should say the effort is getting out of the counterfeit. That's where the effort takes. But once you are in those authentic emotions, oh, that is such a beautiful place to be. And I know I kept saying that today. It's so beautiful, but it really is. And it it is a lightness and a direction. I love his 4 different steps on how to understand what an authentic emotion is. And it truly does. You can tell the difference when you are sitting in an authentic emotion versus a counterfeit. Oh, it's just like the weight of life has been lifted off of you, and you are free to be who you are and what you are meant to be. And that, my friends, is beautiful. Until next time, take care.
Celebrate your dreams, let them take